Start by visualizing a highly specific, but I think universally understood sensation.
Right.
You are staring at a glowing monitor. It is, 2 in the morning. Your eyelids feel like they are weighted with lead. There is this intense scratching grit building behind your corneas, and you have this dull, relentless ache settling right at the base of your skull.
We have all been there.
Exactly. We all know that exact physical friction. It is basically the biological reality of the modern knowledge worker. It is the literal sensation of a complex machine that was, biologically designed to shut down, being actively forced to run far past its thermal and chemical limits.
And if we aggregate that exact universal feeling of exhaustion across the workforce, the resulting economic leak is just, it is staggering.
Yeah.
That physical friction you just described is costing the United States economy alone $411 billion every single year.
Wow. $411 billion.
Every single year.
That is wild. Because, for 150 years, the industrial economy looked at human sleep and basically saw a massive liability. It was viewed as an unbillable, 8-hour void where productivity simply flatlined.
Right.
We built our entire corporate culture around defeating it. We masked the fatigue with caffeine, we celebrated aggressive hustle culture, and we treated biological rest as a professional weakness.
Yeah, sleep was for the weak.
Exactly. But the data we're parsing today shows that the passive era of sleep is entirely over.
It is fundamentally over.
Yeah.
We are actively transitioning into an economic era where advanced artificial intelligence and high-fidelity neuro-telemetry are transforming the bed from, a piece of passive static furniture into an active closed-loop biological machine.
Right.
The multi-trillion-dollar corporate economy has run the numbers, and they have realized that the ultimate leverage for human productivity is no longer found in optimizing the waking mind.
So where is it?
The final frontier of leverage is in hacking the unconscious mind.
Welcome back to MediaGenX. Today we are taking on a massive mission. We are exploring the quiet, highly lucrative rise of what we are calling the synthetic sleep cartel.
It is a fascinating space.
It really is. We're going to map out the exact biological mechanisms these companies are exploiting, the massive flows of venture capital entering the space, and the deeply concerning shifts in how corporations are beginning to view your time in the dark.
And as we move through this data, we have to look at the darker implications, because the data monopolies forming right now around human recovery are moving incredibly fast.
Oh, we will definitely get there. As a warning to everyone listening, later in this deep dive, we're going to spend a significant amount of time exploring the dystopian reality of corporate sleep farms.
Yes, that part is heavy.
It is. We're looking at a present-day reality where certain employers are utilizing advanced telemetry to monitor employee brainwaves, and in some cases, utilizing that data to determine annual bonuses and operational clearance.
It sounds like speculative fiction.
Totally. But it is a highly structural reality in elite sectors today.
The transition from viewing sleep as a private biological function to an audited corporate risk metric, it changes the entire landscape of labor.
It really does. Before we unpack that shift, I want to open a loop for you to keep in mind. By the end of our conversation today, you are going to understand exactly how elite Wall Street traders are currently compressing 8 hours of vital neurological recovery into a highly engineered 90-minute pit stop.
That mechanism is unbelievable.
Right. But to understand how we arrived at that extreme application, we need to establish the macroeconomic baseline. We have to look at the actual economics of exhaustion and what you refer to as the cognitive tax.
Right. So to understand why billions of dollars in venture capital and corporate research are suddenly flooding into synthetic sleep infrastructure, you have to quantify the sheer, staggering economic drag of a chronically tired world.
So let us look at the data.
Let us look at the landmark data published by the RAND Corporation back in 2016. They set out to measure the precise economic impact of sleep deprivation.
And what did they find?
They found that the United States loses up to $411 billion annually.
Just to exhaustion.
Yes. That is roughly 2% of the entire gross domestic product just evaporating.
2%.
Yeah, and Japan is in an even worse position, losing nearly 3% of its GDP to exhaustion. And we have to be incredibly precise about what that financial figure represents. This is not just the cost of catastrophic workplace accidents or, people calling in sick or high turnover rates.
Right. It is easy to assume that number is driven by someone falling asleep at the wheel of a delivery truck or a factory line shutting down.
Exactly. But the vast majority of this $411 billion loss comes from a much quieter, more insidious phenomenon called presenteeism.
Presenteeism?
Yes. Presenteeism is when a worker is physically sitting at their desk, staring at their monitor, and typing on their keyboard, but their prefrontal cortex is operating at a massive cognitive deficit.
They are there, but they are not really there.
Right. When you are operating on fragmented sleep, your brain's ability to form new memories, to regulate emotional reactivity, and to execute complex, multi-step logical reasoning simply plummets.
I look at the old school hustle culture mentality here, and it feels so misaligned with the biology.
Oh, complete.
For decades, the assumption in corporate America was that if you are tired, you just need a stronger coffee and more willpower. You splash cold water on your face and push through the spreadsheet.
The grind.
Right, the grind. We treated the human brain like a software program that just needed a little more RAM allocated to run a heavy background process. But based on the physiological data we're looking at, the brain is not a software program.
No, not at all.
It operates much more like a physical mechanical engine that is literally choking on its own exhaust.
The physical engine analogy is the perfect lens for this. The software analogy is entirely why the industrial economy failed to solve the productivity problem.
Because you cannot out-willpower physics.
Exactly. Willpower and caffeine cannot overcome a physical accumulation of metabolic waste. And this brings us to one of the most critical biological discoveries of the 21st century, a mechanism called the glymphatic system.
Right, the glymphatic system.
It is wild to think about, but this was only formally discovered in 2012.
Wait, 2012? That is incredibly recent.
I know, it's just crazy. For centuries, medical science did not fully understand how the brain cleared away its cellular trash. The rest of your body relies on the lymphatic system to remove waste. But the brain is completely sealed off by the blood-brain barrier. It lacks traditional lymphatic vessels.
So how does this sealed engine actually clear the exhaust of daily cognition?
It relies on a very specific, highly synchronized event that only occurs during the phase called slow-wave sleep.
Wave sleep.
Right. When you enter deep, slow-wave sleep, the glial cells in your brain undergo a radical physical transformation. The glial cells are essentially the structural support network that surrounds and insulates your neurons.
Okay, so what happens to them?
During this deep sleep phase, they physically shrink by up to 60% of their total volume.
Wait, hold on. A 60% reduction in cell volume.
Yes.
That is a massive architectural shift happening inside the skull.
It is an immense physical change. And by shrinking so dramatically, these cells open up wide interstitial channels between the neurons.
Like opening the floodgates.
Exactly. Once those channels open, cerebrospinal fluid rushes through the brain tissue like a high-pressure river.
Wow.
This fluid physically scrubs and flushes out the toxic metabolic byproducts of waking cognition.
And what exactly is it flushing out?
The most notable byproducts being cleared out are beta amyloid and tau proteins.
Those sound familiar.
They should. These are the exact same sticky plaques that are heavily associated with the onset of Alzheimer's disease and long-term cognitive decline.
So if we step back and connect that specific biology back to the macroeconomic data, the picture gets very clear.
Perfectly clear.
If you are surviving on 5 hours of sleep, or your sleep architecture is constantly fragmented by a noisy environment or stress, you never reach a sufficient depth or duration of slow-wave sleep.
Right.
The glial cells never get the signal to shrink. The channels never open. The river of cerebrospinal fluid never flows.
And the resulting cognitive tax is immediate. The metabolic trash literally stays in the brain. You wake up with a fundamentally dirty brain.
A dirty brain, that is a great way to put it.
And the metrics on this are undeniable. Your cognitive processing speed is demonstrably lower. Your working memory fragments. Your emotional volatility spikes because the amygdala becomes hyperreactive.
So you are slower and angrier.
Basically, yes. Now, take that individual biology and scale it up. Imagine you are a major corporation employing 10,000 highly compensated knowledge workers. We are talking about senior software engineers, quantitative financial analysts, corporate legal strategists.
High-value roles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If a significant percentage of that workforce is operating with dirty brains, that is a massive, unquantified liability sitting on your balance sheet.
In the physical economy of the 20th century, a tired factory worker might assemble a car door a few seconds slower, or they might drop a wrench.
Right.
The margin of error was physical, it was visible, and it was usually catchable by quality control. But in today's cognitive economy, the errors are invisible until they are catastrophic.
Bahan.
A chronically tired software engineer might introduce a microscopic, subtle logic bug into a global financial trading algorithm that goes unnoticed until it triggers a flash crash.
Yeah.
A sleep-deprived executive might misread the nuance in a complex macroeconomic indicator and allocate $1 billion of capital to the wrong asset class.
Which is the exact catalyst for why the smartest, most capitalized companies in the world are fundamentally changing their view on rest.
They have to.
Sleep is no longer viewed as a personal, private matter that happens off the clock in the employee's own home. It is now viewed as a critical, manageable supply chain issue.
A supply chain issue for the brain.
Yes. If the employee's prefrontal cortex is the literal machine that produces corporate profit, the corporation has a vested financial interest in aggressively controlling the maintenance cycle of that machine.
So if the underlying biology of the glymphatic flush is so crucial to our cognitive survival, we have to ask why humanity is currently so terrible at executing it.
It is a good question.
Like, what is the physical bottleneck stopping the average person from getting this deep structural recovery every night?
The primary physical barrier for the better part of a century has been the very surface we lie down on. We have to examine the legacy mattress industry.
Okay, the mattresses.
Historically, the entire sleep sector has been a masterclass in low-tech, high-margin deception. You have a $100 billion legacy betting cartel dominated by a few massive conglomerates that essentially own all the major brand names you see in standard retail stores.
Right.
And they built this massive empire on a very simple, very profitable materials trick.
They took cheap materials and wrapped them in expensive pseudoscientific marketing.
Exactly. They took basic, inexpensive polyurethane foam, wrapped it in a visually appealing quilted cover, gave it a technical sounding name like memory foam or phase change cooling gel, and marked it up by 80 to 100%.
Classic.
They systematically convinced the consumer public that the ultimate solution to a highly complex, dynamic neurological process was just a slightly denser piece of passive foam.
But passive foam fundamentally fails at the basic physics of human sleep, right?
It does. By its very chemical nature, it acts as a highly efficient thermal insulator. It absorbs and traps the radiant heat of the human body.
And this is where the physics and the biology intersect perfectly. Because we are not just talking about the subjective feeling of being comfortable, we are talking about thermodynamics.
Thermodynamics, yes.
To actually initiate that vital slow-wave sleep phase, what physically has to happen to the human body?
To initiate, and more importantly, to maintain slow-wave sleep, the human core body temperature must drop by roughly 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit.
2 to 3 degrees.
That specific thermal drop is not just a byproduct of sleep. It is the biological imperative. It is the biochemical trigger that signals the pineal gland to synthesize and release melatonin. And it is the signal that slows the resting heart rate.
Okay, but when you lie on passive polyurethane foam,
it aggressively traps your radiant heat,
Yep.
creating a stagnant microclimate of sweat and thermal friction. Your brain is desperately trying to cool your core down to trigger the glymphatic flush, but the foam is acting like a mirror, reflecting the heat right back into your tissue.
let me challenge that premise for a second.
Go ahead.
Humanity slept on highly passive, basic surfaces for millions of years. We slept on animal skins, woven straw, basic cotton and wool, completely devoid of artificial intelligence or microfluidic cooling systems.
True.
So why is a modern mattress suddenly causing a systemic evolutionary crisis?
Because for millions of years, human biology was perfectly synced with the natural thermal cycle of the Earth. When the sun went down, the ambient temperature of the outdoor environment dropped significantly.
All right.
The human body naturally and effortlessly cooled in tandem with that environmental shift. But modern climate-controlled bedrooms completely broke that evolutionary mechanism. We now sleep in sealed environments that are statically set by a thermostat to 70 degrees all night long.
Yeah.
The ambient temperature never drops. So the environment is entirely static, and we are lying on top of synthetic petrochemical insulators.
So the natural trigger is gone. The environment refuses to cool down, the bed traps the heat, and our core temperature remains elevated.
Exactly.
The biochemical trigger for the glymphatic flush never gets pulled, or it gets pulled so weakly that the cycle is constantly interrupted.
And because of that, the brain experiences continuous microarousals throughout the night. You might not consciously wake up and open your eyes, but your brain is constantly being pulled out of deep, slow-wave sleep to engage in thermal regulation.
So you are just constantly hovering in light sleep, sweating, tossing, and turning.
Yes. And this is precisely where the synthetic sleep cartel is completely disrupting the paradigm. They are aggressively transitioning the concept of the bed from a piece of passive static furniture to an active thermal microclimate.
An active machine.
Yes. The new technological mandate dictates that beds are API connected, dynamically adjusting biological machines.
The hardware required to execute this is fascinating because it completely abandons foam as the primary mechanism.
Completely.
We are talking about integrating hydroponic water tubes, piezoelectric sensors, and AI-driven thermal pumps directly into the sleep surface.
If we break down the user experience of this new architecture, it looks entirely different from a traditional mattress. You lie down on a sleep surface that is actively and continuously monitoring your core body's temperature and your cardiovascular data.
How does it do that without all those sticky hospital wires?
It accomplishes this through non-invasive ballistic cardiography.
Let us pause and explain exactly how that works, because the idea of a bed reading your heart rate without touching you sounds like magic.
That sounds crazy, right?
Yeah. How does ballistic cardiography actually pull a signal through layers of fabric?
It relies on fundamental physics. Every single time your heart beats, it ejects a volume of blood from the aortic arch with a significant amount of force.
Okay.
That ejection creates a microscopic physical mechanical tremor that travels through your entire body. A ballistic cardiography sensor is essentially an incredibly sensitive accelerometer woven invisibly into the fabric of the bed.
Oh, wow.
It does not need to touch your skin or read electrical pulses like an Apple Watch. It physically measures the microscopic mechanical recoil of your body with every heartbeat.
That is incredible.
It turns those microscopic physical tremors into an electrical voltage that the artificial intelligence can read and translate into continuous heart rate and respiratory data.
So the bed knows exactly what stage of sleep you're in, purely based on the mechanical vibrations of your heart and lungs.
Yes. The artificial intelligence detects the exact moment your circadian rhythm dictates that you need a thermal drop to enter slow-wave sleep.
And then what does it do?
Without making a single sound, the control unit initiates a thermal pump, pushing cool 68-degree water through a massive network of microtubing positioned just beneath the surface of the bed.
Like a giant radiator.
It acts as a massive heat sink. It actively pulls the trapped heat away from your core, artificially accelerating your descent into deep sleep.
It is essentially hacking the evolutionary signal. It is bypassing the modern climate-controlled room and telling your brain, hey, the sun has gone down, the environment is cooling rapidly, it is safe to shut down the prefrontal cortex and open the glymphatic channels.
And because it's a closed-loop system, it manages the entire night. 4 or 5 hours later, as your sleep architecture dictates that you need to transition into lighter REM sleep and eventually wake up, the artificial intelligence reverses the pump.
It warms you up.
Exactly. It gently warms the water flowing through the tubes. This gradual temperature rise actively suppresses melatonin production and triggers a natural cortisol-driven awakening.
So no blaring alarms.
Right. You wake up completely refreshed without a jarring alarm clock at the precise optimal moment in your sleep cycle. The bed operates as a continuously adjusting, localized thermostat for your brain.
Right, so the physical thermal environment is solved, the engine is running cool, and the channels are open. But clearing the metabolic exhaust is only half the equation of sleep.
It's only part of it, yeah.
If we view the human brain as an economic asset, the other half is data processing. How do we manipulate the actual information that was acquired during the waking hours?
That brings us to the intricate dialogue of the sleeping brain and a rapidly emerging technology called Targeted Memory Reactivation, or TMR.
TMR, okay.
This is where the optimization moves from thermodynamics into the realm of neuroacoustics. When you are learning a new skill or processing complex information during the day, that raw data is initially and temporarily stored in your hippocampus.
Right.
It does not matter if you are a corporate lawyer memorizing dense legal precedents, a software engineer learning a new coding language, or an athlete practicing a complex physical rotation.
It all goes there first.
Yes. The hippocampus acts as a short-term, highly volatile storage drive. The data residing there is incredibly fragile and easily overwritten by new incoming stimuli.
It is the RAM of the brain. If you turn off the computer without saving the document to the hard drive, the data is gone forever.
Precisely.
So how does that fragile daily data actually become a permanent, accessible skill?
The transfer process occurs during slow-wave sleep through a mechanism called systems consolidation. While you are in deep sleep, the hippocampus literally replays the events and the learning of the day.
It just plays them back.
But it does this at roughly 20 times normal speed.
20 times.
Yes. It rapidly replays the fragile memories and physically transmits that data to the neocortex, the large outer layer of the brain, where it is woven into permanent long-term structural networks.
Okay, that is fascinating.
This high-speed data transfer is accompanied by very specific, highly recognizable electrical signatures that we can measure on an EEG called slow oscillations and sleep spindles.
We should probably define a sleep spindle for context.
A sleep spindle is essentially a rapid, intense burst of high-frequency electrical brainwave activity. If you look at an EEG readout, it literally looks like a tight, densely packed spindle of thread.
Hence the name.
Right. It is the literal data transfer packet moving from the short-term storage of the hippocampus to the permanent architecture of the neocortex.
So the profound realization here is that what we colloquially call learning does not actually happen while we're sitting at a desk studying.
Not at all.
The studying is just raw data collection. The actual compilation and structural saving of the data only happens while we are unconscious.
Exactly that. For decades, neuroscientists knew this high-speed dialogue between the hippocampus and the neocortex was happening, but they could only observe it passively.
They just watched it on the graph.
Right, they could not interact with it.
But today, utilizing artificial intelligence and closed-loop neuroacoustics, we can actually hack the replay mechanism and dictate which specific memories the brain prioritizes during the night. Let us walk through a tangible, real-world case study of this mechanism, because the practical implications are staggering. Let us follow the journey of a medical resident who is trying to memorize the incredibly complex anatomical pathways of the cranial nerves.
This is a perfect example of high-value cognitive acquisition, where the speed of learning dictates career trajectory. During the waking hours, the medical resident is studying the anatomical charts.
Okay.
Every single time they successfully encode a specific nerve pathway, an artificial intelligence system running on their laptop emits a very specific, subtle, low-frequency auditory tone.
So it makes a sound.
Yes, it's completely non-intrusive. It just sounds like a soft ambient ping. But the resident's waking brain subconsciously links and associates that exact audio tone with the specific spatial memory of that cranial nerve.
Through classical conditioning, the brain essentially tags that specific memory with an acoustic watermark.
Yes. Then, that night, the medical resident goes to sleep on their AI-managed sleep matrix. The active microclimate regulates their temperature, the piezoelectric sensors monitor their cardiovascular state, and they're wearing a lightweight, non-invasive EEG headband that is tracking their electrical brainwaves in real time.
So everything is plugged in.
Right. The artificial intelligence is actively watching the incoming telemetry, waiting for the precise millisecond that the resident's brain enters the absolute deepest phase of slow-wave sleep. It is looking for the peak amplitude of a slow oscillation.
And when the algorithm detects that peak,
at that exact optimized millisecond, the artificial intelligence whispers the identical low-frequency tone from earlier in the day through localized speakers in the pillow.
Wow.
The volume is incredibly low, carefully calibrated so it does not trigger an arousal and pull the resident out of deep sleep, but it is just loud enough for the sleeping auditory cortex to register the signal.
And what happens in the brain?
That specific auditory cue effectively forces the hippocampus to instantly pull up and replay the exact tagged memory of the cranial nerve pathway.
This is wild. It is literally bypassing the 10,000-hour rule of mastery. It is like discovering the administrative command prompt for the human brain, allowing us to forcefully download and consolidate institutional knowledge overnight.
The clinical data surrounding closed-loop targeted memory reactivation is absolutely staggering.
I can imagine.
Subjects utilizing TMR protocols consolidate complex spatial and declarative memories up to 40% faster than control groups who sleep normally.
40% faster. That is a massive advantage.
Their long-term retention rates are significantly higher, and the recall speed improves dramatically.
If we elevate this from the individual level to the macroeconomic picture, the impact is immense. Think about the hiring protocols of the future.
Right, it changes everything.
An elite corporate law firm or a highly specialized surgical unit will not simply look for the candidates with the highest raw intelligence. They will actively recruit candidates who understand how to leverage TMR infrastructure to hyper-optimize their nocturnal data compilation.
Yeah.
Your waking baseline IQ becomes a secondary metric compared to the efficiency of your sleep algorithms.
Which logically brings us to the ultimate extreme corporate application of all this underlying technology. We have solved the thermal friction preventing deep sleep, and we have proven that we can artificially accelerate memory consolidation.
So we put it all together.
Now, we apply this infrastructure to highly specialized environments where the cost of a single cognitive error is measured in hundreds of millions of dollars. We are talking about the B2B infrastructure of the polyphasic corporate sleep farm.
This pays off the open loop we teased at the very beginning of the deep dive. How do elite high-frequency quantitative traders actually compress 8 hours of vital recovery into a highly engineered 90-minute pit stop?
In high-stakes, hyper-competitive environments like algorithmic financial trading, global air traffic control, or elite cybersecurity incident response, the traditional 8-hour monophasic sleep cycle is viewed as a massive operational vulnerability.
Because they are offline.
Exactly. If an elite trader managing $1 billion portfolio is asleep for 8 consecutive hours, they are completely offline and entirely blind to the Asian and European market sessions. Global capital never sleeps, so the human biology managing that capital is being forcefully adapted to keep pace.
Enter the polyphasic recovery pod. And to be incredibly clear for the listener, we are not talking about those cute little nap pods with beanbag chairs and ambient music that Silicon Valley startups were installing in their offices back in 2015.
Not even close. The current iteration is entirely different. These are hermetically sealed, entirely sensory-deprived hyperbaric capsules. They are equipped with the absolute bleeding-edge, enterprise-grade suite of thermal, acoustic, and neurochemical optimization tools.
How does it actually play out during a workday?
Here is how the B2B infrastructure actually operates in practice. At roughly 2 in the afternoon, right when the human circadian rhythm experiences its natural biological dip in alertness, an elite trader steps away from their terminal and enters the pod.
Okay.
The artificial intelligence instantly initiates an aggressive, rapid cooling thermal protocol, dropping their core temperature violently fast to force the biological trigger for deep sleep.
It does not casually wait for them to drift off. It physically forces the physiological state required for shutdown.
And overrides the transition. Concurrently, the pod's acoustic system deploys a highly precise frequency of binaural beats.
Let us break down the mechanism of binaural beats, because there is a lot of pseudoscience around them on the internet, but in this clinical application, they are highly functional.
The mechanism is purely mathematical. A binaural beat occurs when you play 2 slightly different acoustic frequencies into each ear simultaneously.
Okay, give me an example.
For example, the system plays a frequency of 300 hertz in the left ear and 304 hertz in the right ear.
So a 4 hertz difference.
Yes. The human brain cannot process those 2 distinct frequencies simultaneously, so it compensates by hearing the mathematical difference between the 2, in this case 4 hertz.
And why is 4 hertz important?
Because 4 hertz happens to be the exact dominant frequency of delta waves, the brain waves that define deep, slow-wave sleep.
Oh, wow.
Through a process called frequency following response, the brain's electrical activity actively entrains to the beat. The artificial intelligence essentially fast-forwards the brain, completely bypassing the lighter, transitionary stages of sleep, plunging the trader directly into deep delta waves.
So for roughly 85 minutes, that trader's brain is just a hyper-efficient, high-pressure system flushing cerebrospinal fluid.
It is 85 minutes of pure, uninterrupted, mathematically induced glymphatic flushing. It aggressively clears out the metabolic waste that accumulated during the high-stress morning trading session.
And then how do they wake up without being groggy?
Then, as the 90-minute window closes, the AI triggers a rapid thermal warming sequence, raising the surface temperature sharply, and floods the interior of the pod with a very specific spectrum of blue-enriched light.
Like a fake sunrise.
Yes. This specific light wavelength violently spikes the trader's cortisol and adrenaline levels, simulating a rapid sunrise. The trader steps out of the pod at exactly 3:35 in the afternoon, operating with absolute zero cognitive decay.
That is insane.
They possess the neurological freshness and processing speed of someone who just slept a perfectly optimized 8 hours.
And if we look at this from a business and investment perspective, this is an incredibly lucrative, sticky, recurring revenue model. This is the birth of recovery as a service.
The revenue potential is massive because the companies manufacturing these pods are not simply selling a piece of hardware. They are selling integrated data ecosystems.
Software margins.
Exactly. They integrate the continuous sleep telemetry from the pods directly into the corporation's internal human resources and cybersecurity systems. The system generates a highly detailed daily cognitive readiness score for every single employee based on their nocturnal data and the efficiency of their polyphasic pit stops.
So what happens functionally if a trader's cognitive readiness score drops? Say they had a stressful weekend, their slow-wave sleep was fragmented, and their glymphatic flush was incomplete.
If that score drops below a legally mandated threshold set by the firm, the company's risk management artificial intelligence automatically and immediately restricts their operational parameters.
They get restricted.
Yes. It might slash their trading limits for the day or revoke their access to highly sensitive cybersecurity infrastructure.
Just based on their sleep data.
If your physical brain is statistically too dirty to safely handle a billion-dollar position, the algorithm simply locks you out of the terminal. Human sleep is no longer a private biological function. It has been transformed into a heavily audited, corporate-managed risk metric.
All right, we have extensively covered the foundational biology, the thermal hardware, and the extreme corporate applications. Let us shift gears and look at the actual capital flow.
Let's do it.
Because if the entire paradigm of human rest is shifting this aggressively, how do you actually position your capital to capture the upside? Right now, if you look at the mainstream financial media, everyone is obsessing over consumer sleep rings, wrist wearables, and basic sleep tracking apps.
And that mainstream narrative is exactly what needs to be aggressively challenged. This is the contrarian take that investors need to internalize.
Okay, what is the take?
Retail investors who are buying into flashy consumer sleep rings and viral meditation apps are making a massive strategic mistake.
Really? Even with all the hype?
Especially because of the hype. The consumer wearable space is a brutal, intensely low-margin race to the bottom. It is entirely dominated by massive technology incumbents, companies with trillion-dollar market caps, who can easily afford to sell the hardware at a loss, simply to harvest the user data on the back end.
Oh, so they are just subsidizing the device to get the data?
Exactly. You do not want to deploy capital into consumer hardware fighting a price war. To position capital effectively in the synthetic sleep space, you need a highly specific playbook focusing entirely on the foundational underlying B2B infrastructure.
So let us lay out that specific playbook. We have 4 concrete steps that an investor or an entrepreneur can analyze and act on this week.
Right.
Step 1 involves the active thermal microclimate and the complex fluidics we discussed earlier. Where is the actual leverage point in that supply chain?
Step 1 is targeting the mid-cap advanced materials companies. You do not invest in the consumer-facing company selling the final smart bed. You invest in the specialized engineering firms manufacturing the underlying solid-state thermoelectric coolers, specifically components known as Peltier devices.
Let us explain why a Peltier device is so critical here compared to a traditional cooling compressor.
A traditional compressor, like the one in your refrigerator or air conditioner, uses chemical refrigerants and moving parts. It is noisy, it vibrates, and it is bulky.
You definitely do not want that in a bed.
Exactly. A Peltier device relies on the thermoelectric effect. When you pass an electric current through a circuit of 2 different semiconducting materials, heat is physically transferred from one side of the device to the other.
So no moving parts.
0 moving parts.
Yeah.
One side gets incredibly cold, the other side gets hot. There are absolutely no liquid refrigerants, and it's completely silent.
Brilliant.
You look for the engineering firms holding the foundational patents on these advanced Peltier devices and the firms designing these silent, high-pressure, microfluidic routing systems.
Because they supply everyone.
They collect a foundational hardware tax on every single smart bed, hospital recovery matrix, and corporate polyphasic pod manufactured globally. They are the underlying utility providers for the entire sector.
Step 2 moves into the telemetry layer. We talked about how the artificial intelligence is completely blind without high-fidelity biological data. You mentioned piezoelectric sensors earlier.
Step 2 is aggressively investing in that specific foundational telemetry layer. Look for the advanced chemical and materials companies manufacturing flexible piezoelectric polymers.
Piezoelectric polymers?
Yes, piezoelectric materials possess a unique physical property. When they're subjected to mechanical stress or physical pressure, even microscopic pressure like the vibration of a heartbeat, they generate a distinct electrical charge.
So they turn physical movement into electricity.
Exactly. These advanced polymers are woven directly into the fabric of the bed. They are so remarkably sensitive that they can read a human heartbeat and a respiratory rate from 3 inches away through a thick mattress protector and a layer of sheets without requiring a single sticky electrode or a wearable device on the wrist.
It is entirely ambient, invisible data collection.
Precisely. And equally critical to those sensors are the companies designing the specialized edge compute microchips.
What do those chips do?
These chips sit locally on the bed's control unit, and their sole function is to filter out the ambient mechanical noise of a shared bedroom, a partner moving, a dog jumping on the bed, to isolate and extract that pure, individual biological signal.
Step 3 is the short strategy. In any massive technological paradigm shift, there is immense value in identifying the incumbents who are about to be destroyed.
Always.
If the new paradigm is active, AI-driven recovery, who are the massive losers in the legacy economy?
You take short positions against the legacy bedding conglomerates and the over-the-counter sleep aid manufacturers.
Foam companies.
Yes, the traditional mattress companies are facing an absolute existential crisis. They are burdened with massive, wildly expensive physical retail footprints, incredibly heavy and expensive physical inventory logistics, and a brand identity built entirely around passive foam.
They cannot pivot.
Culturally and structurally, they completely lack the internal software engineering talent, the artificial intelligence expertise, and the complex microelectronic supply chains required to successfully pivot to building active sleep matrices. They are fundamentally trapped in an obsolete business model.
And what about the pharmaceutical sleep aids? You have a massive industry built around chemicals like melatonin and heavy prescriptions like Ambien.
Severe rapid margin compression is coming for the pharmaceutical sleep sector. Chemicals like Ambien are incredibly blunt instruments.
How so?
They successfully act on the GABA receptors in the brain to force a state of unconsciousness, but in doing so, they actively suppress the natural architecture of slow-wave sleep and entirely obliterate REM sleep.
Oh, wow.
Furthermore, they suppress the high-frequency sleep spindles required for memory consolidation. You are technically unconscious, but you are not biologically recovering.
You were just knocked out.
Yes. When the consumer market fully realizes that AI-driven acoustics and dynamic thermal regulation can reliably induce deep, structurally sound restorative sleep without the severe chemical hangovers and the disrupted neural architecture, the over-the-counter and prescription sleep aid markets will experience a structural collapse.
Which brings us to step 4, the entrepreneurial angle. For the founders and builders listening to this, where is the massive, uncrowded white space in the synthetic sleep ecosystem?
Step 4 is building the architecture for sleep data brokerage APIs. The data generated by an active synthetic sleep matrix over an 8-hour period is the most intimate, continuous, high-fidelity biological data set currently available on Earth.
Because it is 8 solid hours of telemetry.
Right. It contains continuous, second-by-second cardiovascular metrics, respiratory patterns, and localized neurological telemetry. The massive entrepreneurial opportunities to create highly secure, perfectly hypo-compliant software integrations that allow end users to actively lease their sleep telemetry to third parties.
Why would a third party pay for that data?
Because it is the ultimate predictive health metric. Longevity clinics wanted to track the efficacy of their anti-aging peptide protocols. Clinical trial recruiters needed to verify baseline health metrics for pharmaceutical testing. Life insurance companies will aggressively pay for it to dynamically adjust actuarial risk tables.
It is a goldmine of data.
If you build a secure API infrastructure that facilitates that data exchange, you can take a microtransaction fee on every single data handshake between the user and the institution.
The economic logic behind everything we just discussed is flawless. The efficiency gains are undeniable, and the wealth generation potential is massive.
It is.
But we have to force a very sharp tonal shift here, because we cannot just look at the capital flow without interrogating the deeply concerning structural implications of what we are building.
We absolutely have to talk about the dark side.
We have talked about the wealth, we have talked about the cognitive efficiency. But what actually happens to society when we turn human recovery into a highly optimized, heavily surveilled, corporate-managed supply chain?
What happens is we risk permanently destroying the fundamental historical boundary between labor and life. And in doing so, we introduce a terrifying new social dynamic, the biological class divide.
Let us spend some time on this because the implications are profound. For all of human history, sleep was the ultimate, unshakable biological equalizer.
Right.
It fundamentally did not matter if you were an industrial billionaire, a monarch, or a factory worker. Eventually, you reached the limit of your biology, you had to close your eyes, surrender to the dark, and your autonomous nervous system took over. We all shared the exact same vulnerable requirement for recovery.
But the infrastructure of the synthetic sleep cartel is actively designed to shatter that final biological equalizer.
How fast will this gap grow?
Very fast. In the very near future, the wealthy elite will be able to afford the hermetically sealed recovery pods, the perfectly calibrated closed-loop neuroacoustics, the dynamically adjusting active microclimates, and the proprietary peptide stacks designed to enhance glymphatic clearance.
They get the premium biology.
Exactly. They will effectively guarantee themselves 8 hours of perfect, uninterrupted restorative glymphatic flushing, heavily compressed into a highly efficient window. They will wake up every single day with perfectly consolidated memories, cleared metabolic pathways, and maximized neuroplasticity.
While the working class is entirely left behind on passive, heavily degraded foam.
Exactly. The working class will be economically relegated to the noisy, thermally unregulated beds of the legacy economy. They will continue to suffer the continuous destructive microarousals caused by urban noise pollution, the massive thermal friction of cheap synthetic materials, and the severe circadian disruption of multi-job shift work.
That is grim.
The terrifying reality we're modeling is that the wealth gap will no longer just be a social construct measured in bank accounts, stock portfolios, or zip codes.
It becomes physical.
The wealth gap will literally be measured in the physical neurological architecture of the human brain. The working class will rapidly devolve into a biological proletariat, fundamentally unable to compete in a high-speed cognitive economy because their brains are physically and environmentally restricted from optimal recovery.
That is an incredibly chilling visual. The physical, cellular structure of your brain, your literal capacity to think and reason, being explicitly dictated by the price point of your mattress and your access to thermal fluidics.
Yes.
But there is another deeply concerning layer to this dark side, the aggressive gamification of rest and the potential death of the unconscious mind.
The death of dreams.
Right. If an artificial intelligence is optimizing my sleep architecture strictly for deep delta wave recovery, purely to make me a faster, more efficient data processor for my employer, it is going to view the messy, chaotic, unstructured phases of sleep as a biological bug, not a necessary feature.
That is the logical, unavoidable conclusion of extreme optimization. If the primary algorithmic goal is rapid metabolic waste clearance and high-speed data consolidation, the AI will actively suppress the unstructured phases of light sleep and rapid eye movement, or REM sleep.
But we need REM sleep.
REM sleep is the phase where the vast majority of our vivid narrative dreaming occurs. To a strictly tuned efficiency algorithm, a dream is nothing more than biological friction. It is wasted time that could be spent flushing out tau proteins.
But if we allow an algorithm to actively eliminate the chaotic dreaming phase simply to produce a more efficient corporate worker, aren't we actively destroying the exact neurological mechanism where the human brain processes complex emotional grief?
That is the fear, yes.
Dreams are the simulation engine of the brain. It is where we simulate social threats, where we process trauma, and where we engage in the bizarre, highly unstructured associative thinking that generates profound human creativity. If we eliminate REM, are we successfully curing exhaustion but fundamentally killing the muse?
That is the core existential question of this entire technological shift. We could very easily engineer a society of incredibly rested, perfectly optimized biological machines capable of flawless data execution.
But at what cost?
Exactly. In doing so, we risk entirely losing the surreal, irrational, deeply human experience of the dreaming mind. The unconscious mind is not simply a hard drive defragmenting its files. It is the fundamental laboratory of the human soul.
That is a great way to phrase it.
It is where art, empathy, and innovation are born. Systematically stripping that away for the sake of an incremental bump in corporate productivity is a profound, potentially irreversible loss to the human experience.
And the scenario gets significantly worse when we examine the dystopian surveillance aspect of this B2B model. If your employer provides your advanced sleep pod, or if they heavily subsidize your smart bed as part of a mandatory corporate wellness initiative, they fundamentally own the underlying data of your recovery.
The privacy invasion becomes absolute and continuous.
Imagine the HR implications.
Imagine a highly plausible scenario occurring a few years from now. You are up for a major executive promotion. You have hit all your waking KPIs. Your performance reviews are stellar.
You are the perfect candidate.
But the human resources artificial intelligence quietly flags your physiological sleep telemetry, noting that your REM sleep has been highly fragmented for the past 3 weeks and your baseline heart rate variability is depressed.
And what does the AI think that means?
The algorithm interprets this fragmented nocturnal data as a definitive indicator of suboptimal emotional regulation or high latent psychological stress.
You get passed over for the promotion.
Right.
Not because of a single thing you did during your waking performance, but because your unconscious, uncontrollable brainwaves didn't meet the algorithmic corporate standard for emotional stability.
It is terrifying.
The fundamental right to close your bedroom door, turn off the light, and exist entirely unmonitored by the capital class is evaporating in real time.
Which is precisely why, if we extrapolate this out and look at the 10-year macro outlook, the defining legal and philosophical battle of the next decade will not be about waking screen time or social media data privacy.
So what will it be?
It will be the massive legal fight for the right to disconnect and cognitive privacy. Labor unions, civil rights advocates, and progressive legal scholars are going to have to build massive, ironclad legal firewalls around the bedroom to prevent corporate capital from actively tracking, weaponizing, and monetizing the unconscious mind.
Remember that specific number from the very start of our deep dive, the $411 billion economic cost of societal exhaustion.
How could I forget?
The corporate world is rushing aggressively to plug that massive financial leak. But the ultimate solution they are building, this highly engineered, continuously surveilled synthetic sleep matrix, might actually end up costing us the very architecture of our humanity.
It is a profound socioeconomic trade-off that society is currently sleepwalking into. The capital efficiency is obvious, but the long-term human cost is entirely unmodeled.
Let us do a quick 3-bullet recap of the massive structural shifts we have unpacked today. 1. Human sleep is no longer viewed as a passive biological tax. It is rapidly becoming an active, AI-engineered microclimate designed specifically to manipulate the glymphatic system and optimize cognitive capital.
2. The true wealth generation in the synthetic sleep cartel lies in providing the B2B infrastructure, specifically thermal fluidics and piezoelectric sensors, and taking aggressive short positions against the obsolete legacy mattress and pharmaceutical sleep aid industries.
And 3. The extreme algorithmic optimization of human rest deeply threatens to create a permanent biological class divide and risks stripping the human mind of its creative, unstructured, dreaming unconscious.
Absolutely.
So here is the polarizing question I want you to think about as you navigate this new economy. If an AI-driven sleep pod could definitively guarantee you 8 hours of perfect biological recovery and memory consolidation in a compressed 3-hour window, would you use those extra 5 waking hours to work more and increase your economic output? Or would you use them to actually live more?
That is the question.
Does ultimate optimization truly liberate us, or does it just give capital more hours to extract from the human engine?
That is the defining question every single knowledge worker needs to answer for themselves rapidly before the underlying technology simply makes the decision for them.
Hit the subscribe button and send this deep dive to every knowledge worker, biohacker, and investor you know who is trying to navigate the cognitive economy. Next time, we are doing a massive exploration into the algorithmic city, diving deep into how AI-driven dynamic zoning and predictive infrastructure are quietly leading to the total privatization of local government. Stay curious, stay positioned.
Just a final reminder, this discussion is for educational and analytical purposes only and is absolutely not financial advice. Do your own deep research before allocating capital.
Thanks for joining us on MediaGenX.